Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars through the clear metal windows. His ship was called the Divine Thunder, and it was one of the biggest ships in the Zephyrian Empire's navy. The Empire ruled over 847 different star systems, and everyone knew they were the strongest force in the galaxy. The Admiral was proud of his people. The Zephyrians had blue skin that sparkled like precious stones, and they were very tall and elegant. Their ships were beautiful too, made of crystal and metal that shone with bright lights. These ships could destroy whole planets if they wanted to. For 3,000 years, no one had dared to fight them. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, Captain Veltar, "we have found a strange ship near the fourth planet in this system." Kethvar turned around. His golden eyes glowed with interest. "What kind of ship?" "It appears to be from a species we have not seen before. They call themselves humans. The ship is small and plain-looking, nothing like our beautiful vessels." The Admiral walked to his command chair and sat down. "Bring the ship on our viewing screen." The large screen at the front of the bridge showed a ship that looked very different from Zephyrian vessels. It was gray and simple, with no decorations or bright lights. To Kethvar, it looked like a piece of metal that someone had thrown together quickly. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. The screen changed to show the inside of the human ship. A woman with short brown hair was sitting in a captain's chair. She was wearing a blue uniform with some small metal badges on it. She looked calm and relaxed. "Greetings," the woman said with a smile. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Endeavor. We are on a peaceful exploration mission." Kethvar stood up tall and proud. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are in space that belongs to the Empire. No ship may pass through here without our permission." Captain Chen looked thoughtful for a moment. "Well, Admiral, our maps show this as neutral space. We didn't know anyone claimed it. We're just passing through on our way to study some interesting star formations in the next system." The Admiral felt his anger growing. How dare this primitive creature question the Empire's right to this space? For 1,000 years, no one had challenged their territorial claims. "Your maps are wrong," Kethvar said, his voice getting louder. "This space has belonged to the Zephyrian Empire for centuries. You will surrender your ship immediately and submit to Imperial authority." Captain Chen shook her head slowly. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Admiral. We have our own laws and government, but I'm sure we can work something out. Maybe we could agree to disagree and both go our separate ways?" Kethvar could not believe what he was hearing. This human was refusing a direct order from an Imperial Admiral. Such disrespect had not happened in his lifetime. His crew members were looking at each other with shocked expressions. "You dare refuse the will of the Empire?" Kethvar shouted. "Do you not understand who you are speaking to? I command the 5th Imperial Fleet. We have destroyed entire civilizations for less than this insult." Captain Chen remained calm. She even looked a little amused. "Admiral, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. We're not trying to insult anyone. We just want to continue our peaceful mission." The Admiral's pride was hurt badly. He had never been spoken to like this by anyone, especially not by someone from a species he had never heard of before. He decided to teach these humans a lesson they would never forget. "Very well," Kethvar said, his voice cold and threatening. "Since you refuse to show proper respect to the Empire, I will give you one chance to avoid complete destruction. You will contact your entire fleet and order them to come here. They will have 7 standard days to arrive and surrender to Imperial justice." Captain Chen raised her eyebrows. "Our entire fleet? Admiral, that seems like quite an escalation. Are you sure you want to do that?" "I am completely sure," Kethvar replied. 7 days. If your fleet does not arrive and surrender, the Empire will hunt down every human ship in the galaxy and destroy them. This is the price of your arrogance." The human captain was quiet for a long moment. She seemed to be thinking about something. Then, to the Admiral's surprise, she started to smile. The smile grew bigger until she was clearly trying not to laugh. "Admiral," she said, her voice shaking a little with suppressed laughter, "you might want to reconsider that decision." Kethvar felt his face turn darker blue with rage. "Are you laughing at me? At the might of the Empire?" "Not at you personally," Captain Chen said, getting her laughter under control. "It's just that challenging our entire fleet might not go the way you think it will." "Your threats do not frighten me," the Admiral said. "I have seen the ships of hundreds of species. They all fall before Imperial power. Your primitive vessels will be no different." Captain Chen shook her head again, but she was still smiling. "All right, Admiral. If that's really what you want, then we accept your challenge. 7 days, you said?" 7 standard days. Kethvar confirmed. "And when your fleet arrives, they will kneel before the Empire, or be destroyed." "I'll pass along your message," the human captain said. "Thank you for the warning time. That's very considerate of you." Kethvar ended the communication and turned to his crew. They all looked excited. This would be the first real battle the Fifth Fleet had fought in many years. Most of the crew had never seen actual combat. "Send word to the Emperor," Kethvar ordered. "Tell him we have found a new species that dares to challenge the Empire. Request permission to make an example of them." Captain Veltar looked worried. "Admiral, the humans seemed very confident. Should we perhaps gather more information about their capabilities before proceeding?" Kethvar waved his hand dismissively. "Confidence means nothing. Every species thinks they are strong until they face Imperial might. These humans probably have a few dozen ships at most. We will crush them easily." Within hours, the message had reached the Imperial capital. Emperor Zarthul himself was amused by the news. It had been so long since anyone had dared challenge the Empire that it would be entertaining to watch their destruction. Meanwhile, Captain Chen's message to Earth was much different. She sat in her private quarters, speaking to the military. Commanders back home through a secure communication link. "So let me understand this correctly," said Admiral Rebecca Torres, the head of Earth's Defense Force. "An alien empire wants our entire fleet to show up so they can force us to surrender?" "That's about the size of it," Captain Chen replied. The Admiral seemed quite sure of himself, very proud of their empire and their ships. Admiral Torres shook her head and smiled. "Well, I suppose we can't disappoint them. It has been a while since we had a good training exercise for the new recruits." "Should I warn them that they might be making a mistake?" Captain Chen asked. "Oh no," Admiral Torres said, her smile getting bigger. "Let's not spoil the surprise. Send word to all Defense Force units. We're going to have visitors, and we want to make sure they get a proper welcome." The challenge had been made and accepted. In 7 days, 2 very different ideas of power would meet in the empty space between the stars. The news of the human challenge spread through the Zephyrian Empire like wildfire. In the great crystal palaces of the capital world, nobles gathered to discuss this amusing development. It had been over 300 years since anyone had been foolish enough to openly defy imperial authority. Emperor Zarthul sat on his throne made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Around him, his advisors and generals discussed how many ships would be needed to crush these upstart humans. "Your Imperial Majesty," said General Mordak, bowing deeply, "our scouts report that the humans have perhaps 400 ships total. They appear to be scattered across several star systems." The Emperor laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. 400 ships? And they think they can challenge us? How delightfully naive. "Should we send a single battle fleet to deal with them?" asked another general. "No," the Emperor said, standing up from his throne. "This will be a perfect opportunity to remind the galaxy why the Zephyrian Empire rules. We will send 3 full battle fleets, over 2,000 of our finest ships." The generals looked at each other with surprise. 3 battle fleets could destroy entire star systems. It seemed like too much force for such a small enemy. Your Majesty, General Mordak said carefully, is that not excessive? Surely one fleet would be more than enough. Emperor Zarthul's golden eyes glowed brighter. This is not about destroying the humans, General. This is about sending a message to every species in the galaxy. When the Empire speaks, the wise listen. When the Empire is challenged, the challengers disappear completely. Within 2 days, the massive Imperial Armada was assembled. The ships gathered in formation above the capital world, their crystal hulls reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. Each ship was a work of art as much as a weapon of war. The smallest destroyers were still larger than most species, biggest battleships. Admiral Kethvar was given command of the entire force. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, now accompanied by 2 other massive dreadnoughts. The sight of so much power made his chest swell with pride. All ships report. Ready for jump to hyperspace, Captain Veltar reported. Excellent, Kethvar said. Begin the jump. Let us go collect our new subjects. Meanwhile, across human space, the reaction to the Imperial challenge was very different from what the Zephyrians expected. On Earth, in the Defense Force headquarters, in Geneva, Admiral Rebecca Torres was having a meeting with her senior staff. But instead of the tense war planning session one might expect, the atmosphere was almost casual. So, Admiral Torres said, looking at the reports on her tablet, the Zephyrian Empire wants to show us the error of our ways. How thoughtful of them. Commander Lisa Park, the Defense Force's intelligence chief, pulled up a holographic display, showing the approaching Imperial fleet. Our long-range sensors show approximately 2,000 vessels heading our way. They should arrive at the meeting point in 5 days. 2,000 ships, Torres mused. That's actually quite impressive for their level of technology. Should we tell the President? I already did, Commander Park replied. She said to handle it however we think best, but try not to create too much of a diplomatic incident. And the civilian population? Asked another officer. Torres smiled. Well, the news networks are covering it, but most people seem to think it's just another training exercise. The betting pools are actually quite entertaining. This was true. Across human colonies and space stations, people were indeed treating the approaching conflict like a sporting event. In bars and cafes, civilians gathered around news screens to watch updates about the Zephyrian Challenge, as the media had dubbed it. On Mars, in a popular restaurant called the Red Rock Cafe, a group of friends were having lunch and discussing the situation. I bet the whole thing will be over in 10 minutes, said Jake, a mining engineer. Remember what happened when the Koroth Confederation tried to raid our shipping lanes last year? His friend Maria, who worked at the terraforming station, shook her head. 10 minutes? You're being generous. I give it 5 minutes tops. Come on, be fair, said their friend Tom. These Zephyrians have been around for thousands of years. They might last a whole 15 minutes. The conversation was typical of what was happening across human space. People were curious and mildly entertained, but no one seemed particularly worried. At the Defense Force Academy on Luna, the situation was being used as a teaching opportunity. Instructor Captain Williams was explaining to his students how first contact situations could sometimes go wrong. The key thing to remember, he told his class of young cadets, is that every species develops differently. What seems like overwhelming force to one civilization might be completely inadequate to another. A student raised her hand. Sir, are we really just going to use the expeditionary fleet for this? Shouldn't we send something bigger? Captain Williams smiled. Cadet, the expeditionary fleet is perfectly adequate for this situation. Remember, our goal is not to destroy the Zephyrian Empire. It's to help them understand their place in the galactic community. Back in space, the human expeditionary fleet was indeed assembling at the coordinates the Zephyrians had specified. Admiral Torres herself would command the fleet from her flagship, the UES Harmony. The ship looked much like Captain Chen's Endeavor. Functional, clean, but not particularly impressive compared to the ornate Zephyrian vessels. The human fleet consisted of exactly 387 ships. They were crewed mostly by recent Academy graduates and reserve personnel. For most of the crew, this would be their first real deployment, though they had trained extensively in simulations. Ensign David Kim was one of these recent graduates. He stood on the bridge of the destroyer UES Swift Current, watching as more human ships arrived at the meeting point. "Nervous?" asked his friend, Ensign Sarah Okafor, who was manning the communication station. "A little," David admitted. "I mean, I know we've trained for this kind of thing, but 2,000 enemy ships is still 2,000 enemy ships." Lieutenant Commander Jackson, their captain, overheard them. "Don't worry too much, ensigns. The Zephyrians aren't our enemies. They're just confused about how things work out here." "Sir?" Sarah asked. "The Empire has been the biggest power in their local region for a long time," Jackson explained. "They're used to everyone backing down when they make threats. They don't realize that there are civilizations out here that developed very differently." On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Kethvar's armada was making its final jump toward the meeting point. The Admiral stood proudly on his bridge, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of all his ships. "Admiral, Captain," Veltar reported, "we are detecting human ships at the specified coordinates." "How many?" Kethvar asked. "Approximately 400 vessels, as our intelligence predicted." The Admiral nodded with satisfaction. 400 against 2,000. These humans will learn what happens when primitive species challenge their betters. The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a magnificent display of power. The crystal ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon systems. It was a sight designed to inspire awe and terror in equal measure. Emperor Zarthul himself was aboard one of the command ships, having decided to witness the destruction of the humans personally. He stood on the observation deck, looking out at the small human fleet in the distance. "So few ships," he murmured to his aide. "Almost pitiful, really." "Shall we offer them one final chance to surrender, Your Majesty?" the aide asked. "Of course," the Emperor replied. "We are not monsters. If they kneel now, we will only enslave half their population instead of destroying them entirely." The Imperial fleet moved into attack formation, weapons charging with brilliant energy. On every Zephyrian ship, crews prepared for what they expected to be a very short battle. But on the human ships, the mood was quite different. Admiral Torres sat in her command chair, reading reports from her officers with calm professionalism. "All ships report ready, Admiral," her communications officer announced. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Signal the fleet. Assume standard defensive positions. And someone please send a message to the Zephyrian commander. Let's see if we can resolve this peacefully." As the two fleets faced each other across the empty space, both sides were confident of victory. But only one of them really understood what was about to happen. The space between the two fleets crackled with tension. On one side, the magnificent Zephyrian armada spread across several thousand kilometers, their crystal ships gleaming like jewels against the black of space. On the other side, the much smaller human fleet hung in loose formation, their gray vessels looking almost insignificant by comparison. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by his senior officers. The main viewing screen showed the human fleet, and the Admiral felt a mixture of disappointment and contempt. "They look even more pathetic up close," he said to Captain Veltar. "Are you certain these are all the ships they have?" "Our sensors confirm 387 human vessels, Admiral," Veltar replied. "No additional ships detected in the surrounding systems." Emperor Zarthul's voice came over the communication system from his command ship. "Admiral Kethvar, you may begin when ready. I want this to be swift and decisive." "Of course, Your Imperial." "Majesty," Kethvar replied with a bow, even though the Emperor could not see him. On the human side, Admiral Torres was reviewing the tactical display with her officers. The Zephyrian fleet was arranged in a classic battle formation that human military academies had been studying for decades. Impressive-looking ships, commented Commander Martinez, Torres's tactical officer. Very pretty. Their formation is textbook, added Lieutenant Singh from the navigation station. Straight out of their military manuals from about 200 years ago. Admiral Torres nodded. Yes, they clearly follow traditional naval doctrine. Has anyone opened a communication channel yet? Yes, Admiral, reported the communications officer. The Zephyrian commander is requesting to speak with you. Put him through. The main screen on the UES Harmony flickered to life, showing Admiral Kethvar in all his imperial glory. His tall, elegant form was draped in ceremonial armor that sparkled with embedded crystals. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was a marvel of artistic engineering. I am Admiral Kethvar of the 5th Imperial Fleet, he announced formally. You are Admiral Torres, I presume? That's correct, Torres replied with a friendly smile. Thank you for agreeing to meet us here, Admiral. I hope we can work out our differences peacefully. Kethvar's golden eyes flashed with anger. There is nothing to work out. You challenged the authority of the Empire. Now you must face the consequences. Actually, Torres said calmly, you challenged us, remember? You're the one who demanded our entire fleet show up here. Silence, Kethvar shouted. You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy every human ship in the galaxy. This is your final warning. Torres looked thoughtful for a moment. Admiral, before we continue, can I ask you something? How much do you actually know about humanity? The question seemed to catch Kethvar off guard. What does it matter? You are primitives who dare to defy the Empire. That is all I need to know. But you've never actually studied our technology or capabilities, have you? Torres pressed. You're basing your assumptions on what your ships look like compared to ours. Kethvar straightened up proudly. Our ships are the finest in the galaxy. No primitive species could possibly challenge Imperial technology. I see, Torres said sadly. That's unfortunate. Admiral, I'm going to make you an offer. Turn your fleet around right now, go home, and we'll pretend this never happened. No one needs to get hurt. The laughter that erupted from the Zephyrian bridge was like the sound of crystal wind chimes in a storm. Kethvar could barely speak through his amusement. You offer mercy to us? He gasped. 400 ships offer mercy to 2,000? This is the most amusing thing I've heard in centuries. I was afraid you'd say that, Torres replied with genuine regret. In that case, Admiral, you should know that what you're about to see is not our military attacking you. This is our standard defensive protocol for situations like this. Kethvar's laughter stopped abruptly. What do you mean, situations like this? Oh, you know, Torres said casually. When younger civilizations get aggressive and need to be calmed down. It happens more often than you might think. Before Kethvar could respond, Admiral Torres cut the communication. She turned to her crew with a sigh. All right, people. The Zephyrians want to do this the hard way. Activate defensive systems and prepare for non-lethal engagement protocols. Across the human fleet, orders were quietly passed from ship to ship. There was no dramatic scrambling or shouting of commands. Instead, crews calmly activated systems that had been installed on human ships for over a century. On the Zephyrian flagship, Emperor Zarthol had arrived on the bridge to observe the battle personally. He stood next to Admiral Kethvar, both of them watching the human fleet with anticipation. They seem very calm for people about to die, the Emperor observed. Fear affects different species in different ways, Your Majesty, Kethvar replied. Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand their situation. Begin the attack, the Emperor commanded. Admiral Kethvar nodded to his weapons officer. All ships, open fire. Show these humans the true power of the Empire. The Zephyrian fleet erupted into action. Thousands of energy weapons discharged simultaneously. creating a spectacular display of light and power. Massive particle beams lanced across space toward the human ships, each beam capable of destroying a city. The attack was magnificent to watch. Streams of coherent energy painted brilliant lines across the darkness, converging on the human fleet like the fingers of an angry god. Any normal fleet would have been vaporized instantly, but the human ships simply weren't there anymore. Where? 387 human vessels had been floating moments before. Space was now empty. The massive Zephyrian energy barrage passed harmlessly through the void, missing their targets completely. "What happened?" Emperor Zarthul demanded. "Where did they go?" On the bridge of the Divine Thunder, Admiral Kethvar was staring at his tactical displays in confusion. "Sensors report no human ships in the target area. No debris field detected." "Did they retreat?" Captain Veltar asked. "Impossible," Kethvar replied. "Our sensors would have detected any ships jumping to hyperspace." Then, as suddenly as they had disappeared, the human ships were back. But they were no longer in the same positions. The entire human fleet had somehow moved several thousand kilometers during the few seconds they had been invisible. Admiral Torres's voice came over the communication system, reaching every Zephyrian ship simultaneously. "That was a very impressive display, Admiral Kethvar. Your weapons are quite powerful. Now, would you like to see ours?" On the human flagship, Torres was reviewing the tactical situation with her officers. The brief phase shift had allowed them to analyze the Zephyrian weapons and defensive systems completely. "Assessment, Commander Martinez?" she asked. "Their technology is about where we expected, Admiral," Martinez replied. "Energy weapons based on contained fusion reactions, physical armor plating with basic energy shields, very advanced for their development level, but nothing we haven't seen before." "Any immediate threats to our ships?" "None whatsoever, Admiral. Our defensive systems can handle their entire fleet indefinitely." Torres nodded. "Very well. Initiate containment protocol. Remember, we want to disable their weapons without harming the crews." Back on the Imperial flagship, panic was beginning to set in. Admiral Kethvar was shouting orders at his officers, demanding explanations that none of them could provide. "How did they move without using hyperspace drives?" he demanded. "Unknown, Admiral," his science officer replied nervously. "Our sensors detected no energy signatures consistent with any known propulsion method." "Then scan them again. Find out what kind of ships those are." But before the science officer could comply, something even more impossible happened. The human fleet began to multiply. Where there had been 387 human ships moments before, there were now over 1,000, then 2,000, then 4,000. The human fleet grew until it outnumbered the Zephyrian armada 2-1. Emperor Zarthul grabbed Admiral Kethvar's arm. "Is this some kind of illusion?" I don't know, Your Majesty," Kethvar stammered. "Sensors are reading each ship as solid matter, but this is impossible." Admiral Torres's voice reached them again, still calm and professional. "Admiral, what you're seeing is a combination of several technologies. Some of our ships are using holographic projection to create duplicates. Others are using quantum field manipulation to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. It's all perfectly normal by our standards." "Perfectly normal?" Kethvar whispered. "Oh yes," Torres continued. "These are just standard features on our expeditionary fleet vessels. Nothing too fancy. Now, shall we demonstrate our actual weapons, or would you prefer to discuss surrender terms?" The Admiral looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. For the first time in his long career, Kethvar began to realize that he might have made a terrible mistake. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display showing thousands of human ships, where there had been only hundreds before. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the railing of his command platform. Nothing in his 3 centuries of military service had prepared him for this. "Admiral," Captain Veltar said quietly, "should we retreat?" Before Kethvar could answer, Emperor Zarthul's voice cut across the bridge. "Retreat? The Empire does not retreat from primitives. Continue the attack." "But, Your Majesty," Kethvar began. "We don't understand their technology. Perhaps we should—" "I said continue the attack," the Emperor shouted. "Use everything we have." Admiral Kethvar reluctantly nodded to his weapons officer. "All ships, concentrated fire. Target the largest human vessels." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire again, this time focusing all their energy weapons on what appeared to be the human command ships. The space between the fleets lit up like a star-going supernova. Enough energy to destroy entire moons lanced toward the human fleet. The beams struck their targets directly. For a moment, the Zephyrians thought they had succeeded. But when the energy dispersed, the human ships were still there, completely undamaged. "Impossible," whispered the Emperor. On the bridge of the UES Harmony, Admiral Torres watched the Zephyrian attack with professional interest. The ship's defensive systems had absorbed the incoming energy and converted it into useful power for the ship's systems. "That was actually quite impressive," she told Commander Martinez. "Their energy output is nearly 10% higher than our projections suggested." "Should we return fire, Admiral?" asked Lieutenant Singh. Torres shook her head. "Not yet. Let's see if they have anything else to try first. I'd hate to end this before they've had a chance to show us their full capabilities." Across the human fleet, similar conversations were taking place. The crews were treating the Zephyrian attack like a training exercise, calmly monitoring their systems and taking notes on Imperial technology. On the destroyer UES Swift Current, Ensign David Kim was amazed by how routine everything felt. "Is it always like this?" he asked Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "Not always," Jackson replied. "Sometimes the other side figures out they're outmatched before they start shooting. But the ones with big egos usually need a demonstration." On the Imperial flagship, panic was spreading through the crew. The science officer was frantically running scans of the human ships, trying to understand how they had absorbed such massive amounts of energy without taking any damage. "Report!" Admiral Kethvar demanded. "The human ships appear to have some kind of energy absorption system," the science officer said, his voice shaking. "Our weapons aren't just being blocked. They're being converted into power for their systems. Emperor." Zarthul pushed past Admiral Kethvar to stare at the tactical display. "That's impossible. No known technology can do that." "Apparently some technology can," Kethvar said quietly. Admiral Torres's voice came over the communication system again. "Admiral Kethvar, I can see you're confused about our defensive capabilities. Would you like me to explain how they work?" "This is some kind of trick," the Emperor muttered. "Illusions, deceptions." "I assure you, Your Majesty," Torres continued, apparently able to hear them, "everything you're seeing is quite real. Our ships use quantum energy absorption fields to convert incoming attacks into useful power. It's actually one of our older technologies. We developed it about 300 years ago." Admiral Kethvar found his voice. 300 years? But that would mean that we've been spacefaring much longer than you realized? Yes, that's correct. We've been quietly exploring this galaxy for quite some time now. The revelation hit the Zephyrian command like a physical blow. If humanity had been in space for centuries, why had they never encountered them before? "Now," Torres continued, "I've shown you our defensive systems. Would you like to see our weapons? I promise we'll be gentle." "No!" Kethvar shouted into the communication system. "Whatever you're planning, don't—" But it was too late. The human demonstration had already begun. There were no dramatic energy beams or massive explosions. Instead, something much more subtle and terrifying happened. The Zephyrian ships simply stopped working. Across the Imperial fleet, weapons systems went offline. Not damaged or destroyed, just turned off. Engine systems shut down peacefully. Life support continued to function, but everything else went dark. On the bridge of the Divine Thunder, Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as every System on his ship powered down except for basic life support and communications. What did they do to us? Captain Veltar whispered. The answer came from Admiral Torres. We've temporarily disabled your weapons and propulsion systems. Your crews are perfectly safe, and we can restore full power whenever you're ready to discuss this situation rationally. Emperor Zarthul was staring at the dead control panels around him. How? How is this possible? Electromagnetic pulse technology, Your Majesty, Torres explained patiently, but very precisely targeted. We can shut down specific systems without affecting others. Again, this is fairly basic technology by our standards. Across the Imperial fleet, similar scenes were playing out on every ship. Crews sat in darkened corridors lit only by emergency lighting. Weapons officers stared at dead control panels. Engineers tried desperately to restart systems that had been shut down by technology they didn't understand. But the most shocking part was still to come. Admiral Kethvar, Torres's voice announced, we're sending boarding parties to your ships. Please don't be alarmed. They're just coming to make sure everyone is safe and to explain what's happening. Boarding parties? Kethvar gasped. But our shields are still up. Our hull armor is intact. Yes, about that, Torres said. Our people don't really need to worry about shields and armor. You'll see. On the Imperial flagship, the crew watched in amazement as human figures simply materialized on the bridge. They didn't beam in with energy transporters or cut through the hull. They just appeared as if they had walked through the walls. Admiral Kethvar found himself face to face with a young human woman wearing a simple blue uniform. She had short blonde hair and a friendly smile. Hello, Admiral, she said politely. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Park from the UES Harmony. I'm here to make sure everyone is okay and to answer any questions you might have. How did you get through our shields? Kethvar demanded. Phase shifting, Lieutenant Park replied as if it was the most normal thing in the world. We just adjusted our molecular phase to match your ship's internal structure. It's actually quite easy once you understand quantum physics. Emperor Zarthul stepped forward, his royal robes rustling. Do you know who I am, human, Lieutenant? Park looked at him and nodded respectfully. Yes, Your Majesty. You're Emperor Zarthul of the Zephyrian Empire. It's an honor to meet you, sir. Admiral Torres asked me to give you her regards. The Emperor was speechless. This young human was treating him with polite respect, as if she was meeting a foreign dignitary rather than a conquered enemy. I don't understand what's happening, the Emperor said quietly. I know this is confusing, Lieutenant Park said sympathetically. Admiral Torres would like to speak with you personally if you're willing. She's prepared a briefing that should help explain the situation. Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge. Human personnel were working alongside his crew, not as conquerors, but as technicians. They were checking systems, making sure the ship was safe, and politely answering questions from confused Zephyrian officers. You're not here to kill us, he said, more as a statement than a question. Oh, no, sir, Lieutenant Park replied. We're here to help. This is all just a big misunderstanding. The Admiral sat down heavily in his command chair. In less than 10 minutes, everything he thought he knew about warfare, about power, about the galaxy itself, had been turned upside down. What happens now? He asked. Lieutenant Park's smile grew warmer. Now, Admiral, you get to learn something new. 2 hours later, Emperor Zarthul found himself in a situation he had never imagined possible. He was sitting in his own throne room aboard his flagship, but across from him sat a human woman drinking tea as if this was a social visit. Ambassador. Elena Vasquez was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had arrived shortly after the Imperial fleet had been disabled, along with a small diplomatic team. Now she was calmly explaining to the most powerful being in the Zephyrian Empire why his mighty fleet had been defeated so easily. I hope you understand, Your Majesty, Ambassador Vasquez said, setting down her cup, that what you experienced today was not actually a military engagement. It was a safety demonstration. Emperor Zarthul stared at her in disbelief. Safety demonstration. Yes, the ambassador nodded. When a younger civilization becomes aggressive toward others, we have standard procedures to help them understand the situation before anyone gets hurt. Younger civilization, the emperor repeated. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled this region of space for over 3,000 years. And that's very impressive, Ambassador Vasquez said warmly. 3,000 years is a significant achievement. Humanity has been watching your progress with great interest. Watching us? Admiral Kethvar, who had been standing silently beside the throne, finally spoke. For how long? Oh, about 200 years now, the ambassador replied casually. Ever since you developed faster-than-light travel, we always keep an eye on species when they start expanding beyond their home systems. The emperor felt dizzy. You've been watching us for 2 centuries. Of course. It's important to monitor developing civilizations to make sure they don't accidentally hurt themselves or others. Space can be dangerous when you're just learning how to navigate it. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. But if you've been watching us, why did you never make contact? Ambassador Vasquez smiled. Because you weren't ready yet. First contact is a delicate process. We've learned it's better to wait until a species has matured enough to handle the reality of galactic civilization. And you think we're ready now? The Emperor asked. Well, the ambassador said thoughtfully, attacking peaceful explorers isn't usually a sign of maturity, but your willingness to listen now suggests you might be ready to learn. She activated a small device on the table between them. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of the galaxy that was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. This is the actual political situation in this part of the galaxy, Ambassador Vasquez explained. The colored areas represent different civilizations and their territories. Emperor Zarthul stared at the map in shock. The Zephyrian Empire, which he had thought covered a significant portion of the galaxy, was just a tiny speck in one corner. Hundreds of other civilizations were marked on the map, many of them controlling far larger territories. This can't be right, he whispered. I'm afraid it is, Your Majesty. The galaxy is much more crowded than you realized. The Zephyrian Empire is actually quite small compared to most established civilizations. Admiral Kethvar pointed at a large blue area that seemed to encompass vast regions of space. What is that? That's the Galactic Cooperation Initiative, the ambassador explained. It's an organization that helps coordinate peaceful relations between different species. Humanity serves as one of the mediating members. How many species belong to this organization? The emperor asked weakly. Currently, about 14,000 different civilizations, though not all of them are actively involved in interstellar politics. The number was so large that both Zephyrians had trouble comprehending it. 14,000 civilizations, and they had never heard of any of them. But our ships, Admiral Kethvar said desperately. Our weapons, our technology. We're the most advanced species we've ever encountered. Ambassador Vasquez nodded sympathetically. You are indeed very advanced for a species at your level of development. Your crystal-based technology is quite beautiful and efficient. But you have to understand, every species develops differently. She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show various types of spacecraft. The Altarians develop living ships that grow like plants. The Mechanicus Collective builds vessels, the size of small moons. The ethereal communes create ships that exist partially in other dimensions. And humans? The Emperor asked quietly. Humans tend to focus on practical, multi-purpose technology. We're not the most advanced species in the galaxy, but we're good at building things that work reliably in many different situations. Admiral Kethvar was studying the display intently. The ships that defeated us today, what classification are they? Those were expeditionary fleet vessels, the ambassador replied. Essentially our Coast Guard. They are designed for exploration, first contact situations, and light peacekeeping duties. Coast Guard, the Admiral repeated numbly. If it makes you feel better, Ambassador Vasquez added kindly, your ships performed quite well against them. It took almost 8 minutes to disable your entire fleet. That's actually above average for civilizations at your development level. Emperor Zarthul buried his face in his hands. What you're telling me is that we challenged the galactic equivalent of a police force with our entire military, and we lost in 8 minutes. 7 minutes and 33 seconds, actually, the ambassador corrected gently. But who's counting? There was a long silence in the throne room. Finally, Admiral Kethvar asked the question that both Zephyrians were thinking. What happens to us now? Will you destroy our empire, enslave our people? Ambassador Vasquez looked genuinely shocked. Destroy you? Why would we do that? You haven't actually hurt anyone. You just made some threats and fired some weapons that couldn't damage our ships anyway. But we challenged you, the Emperor said. We attacked your fleet. You challenged our Coast Guard, the ambassador corrected with a smile, and then you listened to reason when we explained the situation. That shows wisdom and maturity. She leaned forward in her chair. Your Majesty, the Galactic Cooperation Initiative would like to invite the Zephyrian Empire to join as an associate member. Associate member? It means you would have access to our trade networks, scientific databases, and diplomatic services. In return, you would agree to follow basic galactic law. No attacking peaceful ships, no enslaving other species, things like that. Admiral Kethvar looked suspicious. What's the catch? No catch, Ambassador Vasquez said. Although there is one small requirement. You would need to attend a brief educational seminar about galactic civilization, just to make sure you understand how things work out here. How brief? The Emperor asked cautiously. Oh, only about 6 months. You'd stay on one of our educational stations and learn about interstellar law, proper first contact procedures, basic galactic history, that sort of thing. Emperor Zarthul thought about this for a long moment. 6 months ago, he had believed. He ruled one of the greatest empires in the galaxy. Now he was learning that his empire was a small, backwards nation that had just tried to pick a fight with forces far beyond their understanding. Admiral Torres mentioned something about this not being your actual military, he said finally. Ambassador Vasquez smiled. Oh, you don't want to know about our actual military, Your Majesty. Let's just say that what you saw today was the gentle option. But you're offering us a chance to join your organization anyway? Every species goes through this phase, the ambassador explained. You develop space travel, you get a little cocky, you pick fights with your neighbors. It's perfectly normal. Most civilizations grow out of it once they understand the bigger picture. Admiral Kethvar stepped closer to the holographic display. And if we refuse your offer? Then you go home, and we pretend this never happened, Ambassador Vasquez said simply. Though I should mention that if you try to attack any more peaceful explorers, we'll have to intervene again, and next time we might not be quite so patient. The Emperor stood up from his throne and walked to the window of his throne room. Outside, he could see human ships working to restore power to his fleet. Young human technicians were moving between Zephyrian vessels, fixing systems and making sure everyone was safe. They're helping us, he said quietly. Of course they are, the ambassador replied. That's what neighbors do. Emperor Zarthul turned back to face her. Very well, Ambassador. The Zephyrian Empire accepts your invitation to join this Galactic Cooperation Initiative. Excellent. Ambassador Vasquez stood up and extended her hand. Welcome to the galactic community, Your Majesty. As they shook hands, the Emperor asked one final question. Just out of curiosity, what would have happened if we had actually threatened one of your core worlds instead of just an exploration? Ship? Ambassador Vasquez paused for a moment, then smiled. Your Majesty, that's one question I hope you never find the answer to. 3 weeks later, Admiral Kethvar stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Educational Station Perseus, watching ships from dozens of different species coming and going. Beside him, Emperor Zarthul was reading a tablet containing basic galactic law. "It says here," the Emperor remarked, "that there are over 300 species currently attending various educational programs on this station alone." "All of them former aggressors?" Kethvar asked. "Apparently so, though some are here voluntarily to learn about Galactic."
The old human ship drifted through the dark space near Kepler Junction. Her name was Steadfast, and she looked like she had seen better days. The metal hull was covered with patches and scars from old battles. Paint had worn off in many places, showing the bare metal underneath. Dents and scrapes marked every surface. Anyone looking at her would think she was ready for the scrapyard. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair on the bridge. She was 55 years old with gray hair and lines around her eyes. Those lines came from years of squinting at star charts and enemy ships. Her uniform was clean but old, like everything else on the ship. She watched the scanner screen with calm eyes. The bridge was small and cramped. The walls were lined with old equipment that hummed and beeped softly. Everything worked, but nothing looked new or fancy. The crew moved around their stations with easy practice. They had been together for many years. Chief Engineer Martinez stood near the back of the bridge. He was a big man with grease under his fingernails and a smile that never quite left his face. He knew every bolt and wire on the ship. Next to him, Weapons Officer Chen checked her controls for the third time in 10 minutes. She was young, but had steady hands and sharp eyes. The scanner made a soft beeping sound. Lieutenant Park at the sensor station looked up. "Captain, we have a ship approaching. Big one. Looks like a Zephyrian cruiser." Captain Vasquez nodded. "Put it on screen." The main viewer lit up with the image of a massive warship. It was beautiful in a deadly way. The hull was smooth and white, with blue lights running along its sides. Weapon ports gleamed like jewels. Everything about it said power and technology. It was at least 3 times the size of the Steadfast. "Impressive," Martinez said quietly. "They sure like their ships pretty. Pretty ships make pretty targets." Chen replied without looking up from her weapons console. The communication system crackled to life. A deep voice filled the bridge. "Primitive human vessel. This is Commander Dexler of the Imperial Cruiser. Dominant Pride. You will prepare to be boarded for inspection." Captain Vasquez raised an eyebrow. She pressed the communication button. "This is Captain Vasquez of the Earth ship Steadfast. We are on a peaceful mission through neutral space. We request safe passage." Laughter came through the speakers. It was not friendly laughter. Safe passage? Look at your pathetic ship, human. You fly in a piece of junk that should have been scrapped decades ago. We will inspect your cargo and decide if you deserve to continue. More voices joined the laughter. The Zephyrian bridge crew was clearly having fun. Captain Vasquez kept her face calm, but her crew exchanged looks. They had heard this kind of talk before. On the main screen, they could see the alien ship more clearly now. It was a thing of beauty and terror. Weapon systems covered its hull like scales on a snake. Shield generators glowed with blue energy. The ship looked like it could destroy a small planet, Captain Lieutenant Park said quietly. "I'm picking up multiple communication signals. They're broadcasting on open channels. Other ships are listening." Commander Dexler's voice came again, louder and more arrogant. "Attention all vessels in this sector. Come witness the encounter between superior Zephyrian technology and primitive human scrap. You will see why the old races rule the galaxy, while newcomers like humans crawl through space in their rust buckets." More ships appeared on the scanner. They came to watch the show. Captain Vasquez could see them gathering at a safe distance. Word was spreading fast through subspace. The great Zephyrian commander was going to teach the humans a lesson. "Look at that pathetic excuse for a warship." Commander Thexala continued his broadcast. "It's 40 years old if it's a day. Probably held together with wire and prayer. The humans think they can fly through our territory in this floating junk pile?" His crew laughed again. The sound echoed through the Steadfast's bridge. Captain Vasquez turned to look at her officers. Martinez was shaking his head with amusement. Chen was running system checks with a small smile on her face. Lieutenant Park was tracking all the ships that had come to watch. They seemed very confident. Captain Vasquez said calmly. "Youth often is," Martinez replied. "They've never seen what happens when someone pushes too hard." The Zephyrian commander's voice grew more demanding. "Human captain, you will cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. We will search your ship from top to bottom. Any resistance will be met with force. Your primitive weapons are no match for our advanced systems." Captain Vasquez looked at the beautiful alien ship on her screen. She thought about all the battles the Steadfast had fought, all the enemies they had faced, all the times people had looked at their old ship and laughed. She thought about the scars on her hull and what each one meant. She pressed the communication button again. "Commander Vexler, I repeat our request for safe passage. We have no hostile intent. We simply wish to continue our journey." "Safe passage denied," the alien commander shouted. "You will submit to our authority or face the consequences. Your rust bucket is no match for the pride of the Zephyrian fleet." The watching ships moved closer. They wanted a good view of what would happen next. The galaxy loved to see the new species put in their place. Humans were still newcomers, and newcomers needed to learn respect. Captain Vasquez sat back in her chair. She looked at her crew one more time. They were ready. They had always been ready. The Steadfast might look old and worn, but she had survived things that would have destroyed prettier ships. "Commander the Xolar," she said into the communicator, her voice steady and calm. "We have places to be." Commander the Xolar stood on his bridge and stared at the human ship on his screen. The ugly old vessel just sat there in space like it owned the place. His anger grew with each passing second. How dare these newcomers refuse his commands? Did they not understand who they were dealing with? The Zephyrian commander was young for his rank. His scales were bright blue and green, showing his noble birth. His uniform was perfect, with medals that caught the light from the bridge displays. He had never lost a battle, but then again, he had never fought a real one either.
Ow.
Most enemies surrendered when they saw his beautiful ship. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "the human ship is not moving. They ignore our commands." "I can see." That Nix Aller snapped. He turned to face his crew. They were all young and proud, just like him. They wore their uniforms with the same confidence. They believed in their ship and their technology. Why should they not? The dominant Pride was the newest ship in the fleet. Everything about it was perfect. "Open a channel to all ships in the area," Thexaller ordered. "Let everyone hear what happens to those who do not respect Zephyrian authority." The communication officer nodded. "Open, sir." Broadcasting on all frequencies, Thexaller smiled. This would be a good lesson for everyone watching. The galaxy needed to know that the old races still ruled space. These humans were new and weak. They needed to learn their place. "Attention, all vessels," he spoke into the communicator. "You are about to witness the power of Zephyrian technology. This human ship dares to refuse our lawful commands. They fly through our territory in their ancient rust bucket, as if they belong here." He could see more ships gathering on his scanner. Word was spreading fast. Ships came from all directions to watch the show. Some were merchants, others were military vessels from different races. All of them wanted to see what would happen. On the human ship, Captain Vasquez watched the alien commander with calm eyes. She had seen his type before, young, proud, and dangerous because they had never learned caution. She turned to Martinez. "Chief, how are our systems?" Martinez grinned. "Running like a dream, Captain. Old girl's ready for whatever comes." Chen looked up from her weapons console. "All systems green, Captain. Should I start the warm-up sequence?" "Not yet," Vasquez said quietly. "Let's see how far they want to push this." Lieutenant Park was tracking all the ships that had come to watch. "Captain, we have 12 vessels in scanning range now. More coming." "All the time." Vasquez nodded. She understood what was happening. The young alien commander was putting on a show. He wanted to prove his power in front of an audience. It made him more dangerous, but also more predictable. Commander Thexalar continued his broadcast. "Look at this pathetic human vessel. Tick. Years old, maybe more. Patches, covering patches. It probably breaks down twice a week, and yet they think they can challenge the might of the Zephyrian Empire. His crew laughed. The sound carried across the communication channels to all the watching ships. Some of the other vessels sent their own messages of support. Everyone enjoyed seeing the newcomers put in their place. Humans are a young race, Vexalar went on. They have been in space for less than a century. They know nothing of war, nothing of power. Their ships are built by amateurs who copy the designs of their betters. He was getting excited now. The watching ships were encouraging him. Messages of support came from across the sector. Everyone wanted to see the human ship humbled. Their weapons are primitive projectile systems, he announced. Crude metal slugs fired by chemical explosives. They have no understanding of energy weapons or quantum shields. They are children playing with toys. On the Steadfast, Chen smiled at that comment. Chemical explosives, she said quietly. If only he knew. Martinez chuckled. Should we tell him about the magnetic acceleration system? Or the fusion warheads? Him keep talking, Captain Vasquez said. Knowledge is power. The less he knows, the better for us. The alien commander was really warming up now. Their shields are probably simple energy barriers. Their armor is basic metal plating. One shot. From our plasma cannons, we'll cut through their hull like paper. More ships arrived to watch. Aye! The crowd was growing. Vexalar felt the excitement building. This would be remembered across the galaxy. The day the Zephyrians showed the humans their place. I will give you one final chance, human captain. He broadcast directly to the Steadfast. Surrender now, and submit to boarding. Your ship will be impounded, and your crew questioned. Refuse, and I will demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire rules this sector of space. Captain Vasquez looked at her crew one more time. They were ready. Chen had her hand on the weapons controls. Martinez was monitoring the power systems. Park was tracking every ship in the area. They had done this dance before. She pressed the communication button. Her voice was calm and steady. Commander Vexalar, I have already given you our answer. We are on a peaceful mission through neutral space. We request safe passage to continue our journey. Peaceful? Vexalar laughed. There is no peace for those who defy Zephyrian authority. You will learn that your primitive ship is no match for superior technology. He turned to his weapons officer. Charge all plasma batteries. Arm quantum torpedoes. Prepare to show these humans what real firepower looks like. The dominant pride began to glow as its weapon systems came online. Blue energy ran along its hull like lightning. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Every alien who saw it felt pride or fear, depending on which side they were on. All ships stand witness, Vexalar announced. The Zephyrian Empire does not tolerate disrespect. This human rust bucket will burn, and its crew will beg for mercy. Captain Vasquez heard every word. She had heard threats like this before, from enemies far more dangerous than this young alien commander. She looked at the beautiful ship on her screen and thought about all the beautiful ships the Steadfast had faced over the years. Chen, she said quietly, bring our systems online, slowly and quietly. Yes, Captain Chen replied. Her fingers moved over her controls with practiced skill. Martinez, how's our power? Plenty to spare, Captain. Reactors are purring like kittens. Vasquez smiled slightly. The alien commander thought he was about to teach the humans a lesson. He had no idea that he was about to get one himself. Commander the Vexalar raised his hand high in the air. The bridge of the dominant pride was silent except for the hum of charging weapons. Every eye was on their young commander. He was about to show the galaxy the power of Zephyrian technology. Fire! Warning shots, he commanded. Let them see what they face. A bright blue plasma bolt shot out from the alien ship. They passed close to the Steadfast, lighting up space around the old human vessel. The bolts were beautiful and deadly, leaving glowing trails in the darkness. Any normal ship would have been badly damaged just from being near them. The human ship did not move, sat in space like nothing had happened. Vexalar frowned. He had expected the humans to panic or beg for mercy. Instead, their ship just floated there as calm as before. On his screen, he could see the human bridge. The crew was working at their stations like this was just another day. Perhaps they did not understand, his weapons officer suggested. Humans are primitive. They may not recognize superior firepower when they see it. Then we will make it clear, Vexillar said. His anger was growing. How dare they ignore his warning? Target their engine section. 50% power. We will disable them and drag them home. The Dominant Pride's main guns swiveled toward the human ship. Energy built up in the weapon chambers until they glowed white-hot. The alien crew watched. Their displays with excitement. This would be easy, Fire Vexillar ordered. 3 massive plasma bolts lanced out toward the Steadfast. They hit the old ship dead center, exactly where the Exilor had aimed them. Brilliant light-filled space as the weapon struck home. The watching ships saw the explosion and waited for the human vessel to break apart. But when the light faded, the Steadfast was still there. Her shields had absorbed the entire attack. They glowed softly around the ship like a second skin, completely undamaged. Vexillar stared at his screen. That was impossible. His weapons should have cut through any primitive human shields like they were made of paper. He turned to his weapons officer. Sensors show no damage, sir, the officer reported. His voice was confused. Their shields held completely. Impossible, Vexillar snapped. Increase power to 75%. Fire again. It's time 6. Plasma bolts hit the human ship. Explosion was even brighter, lighting up every vessel in the area. Surely no ship could survive that much firepower. The aliens waited for debris and escape pods. The Steadfast emerged from the blast completely untouched. Her shields had not even flickered. On the human bridge, Captain Vasquez watched the alien. Weapons hit her ship. The lights dimmed slightly as the shields absorbed the energy, then returned to normal. She looked at Martinez. How are we doing, Chief? Shields at 98%, Captain, Martinez replied with a grin. These kids hit about as hard as a light rain. Dude. Chen looked up from her weapons console. Captain, they're plasma weapons. Are designed to fight other energy-based systems. Our gravitational shields work on completely different principles. They might as well be throwing rocks at us. Vasquez nodded. The Steadfast had been built during humanity's darkest war, when survival meant everything. Every system on the ship had been designed by people who knew that losing meant extinction.
Oh.
The aliens had no idea what they were really facing. Chen, bring our engines online. Full power. Yes, Captain. The old human ship suddenly moved. She accelerated faster than any ship her size should have been able to move. The aliens watched in shock as the rust bucket they had been mocking shot forward like a bullet. How are they moving so fast? Vexillar demanded. Their engines should be primitive fusion drives. The science officer checked his readings twice. Before answering, Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from their engine section. But the design doesn't match anything in our databases. The Steadfast moved with impossible grace for such an old ship. She turned and twisted through space like a fighter instead of a heavy cruiser. The watching vessels could hardly believe what they were seeing. Sir, the weapons officer said nervously. They're targeting us. Vexillar looked at his screen. The human ship had turned toward them and was accelerating fast. He could see weapon ports opening along her hull. They looked different from any weapons he had seen before. Instead of the smooth energy weapon ports of civilized ships, these were rough holes that looked almost primitive. Their weapons are coming online, his tactical officer reported. But sir, they're not energy weapons. They appear to be some kind of projectile system. Vexillar laughed. His fear was replaced by amusement. Projectile weapons? Against our shields? They might as well throw stones at us. He opened a channel to the human ship. Foolish humans, your primitive guns cannot harm us. We have quantum shields that can stop any physical projectile. Surrender now before you embarrass yourselves further. Captain Vasquez pressed her communication button. Her voice was calm as always. Chen, show them what obsolete means. The human ship's guns fired, but these were not the simple projectile weapons the aliens expected. These were magnetic railguns that accelerated metal slugs to a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles hit the alien ship's shields and passed right through them like they were not there. The dominant Pride shook as the metal slugs tore into her hull. Sparks flew across the alien bridge as systems overloaded. Alarm sirens began to wail. "Impossible," Vexaler shouted. "Nothing can penetrate our shields." His science officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, their projectiles are moving too fast for our shields to stop. The quantum field can't form fast enough to block them." More railgun shots hit the alien ship. Each one punched clean holes through the beautiful hull. The Zephyrians had built their ship to fight other energy weapon users they had never faced. Kinetic weapons fired at such incredible speeds. "Return fire," Vexalar ordered. "All weapons." The dominant Pride unleashed everything she had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and quantum torpedoes all struck the human ship at once. The explosion was so bright it hurt to look at. When the light faded, the Steadfast was still there. Her shields had absorbed the entire attack and were already back to full strength. "Her shields are adapting," the alien tactical officer reported in a shaking voice. "Each attack makes them stronger." Vexaler stared at the human ship in growing horror. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be weak and primitive. Their ship was supposed to be easy prey. Instead, his beautiful cruiser was being torn apart by weapons he didn't understand. Captain Vasquez opened a channel. "Commander, this is your final warning. Stand down your weapons and withdraw." "Never," Vexazer screamed. "We are Zephyrians. We do not surrender to primitives." Captain Vasquez looked at her crew. It tried to avoid this fight. Now they would finish it. "Chen," she said quietly, "disable their engines." Chen's fingers moved across her weapons console with deadly precision. She had been waiting for this moment since the alien commander started his threats. The targeting computer locked onto the dominant Pride's engine section. It was beautiful, but beauty meant nothing when you were fighting for your life. "Firing," Chen said calmly. 4 railgun shots streaked across space. They hit the alien ship's engines with perfect accuracy. Metal and sparks flew from the impact points. The beautiful blue glow of the Zephyrian engines flickered and died. The dominant Pride went dark except for emergency lighting. Commander Vexaler was thrown from his command chair as his ship shuddered. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the bridge. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. His beautiful, perfect ship was dying around him. "Engine room report," he shouted. "Sir, main engines are destroyed," came the panicked reply. "We have no power to the drive systems. We're dead in space." Vexalar stared at the human ship on his screen. The old rust bucket had not moved. She just sat there in space like a patient predator. He could not understand how this was happening. His ship was new and advanced. The humans were supposed to be primitive. "Weapons, fire everything we have left," he ordered desperately. "Sir, most of our weapons are offline. The humans hit our power distribution system, then use what we have." The remaining weapons on the dominant Pride fired at the human ship. Plasma bolts and particle beams struck the Steadfast shields. But now the alien crew could see something that filled them with terror. The human shields were learning. Each attack made them stronger and more efficient. Captain Vasquez watched. The alien weapons bounced harmlessly off her ship. She turned to Martinez. "Chief, show them our point defense system." Martinez grinned. "With pleasure, Captain." The Steadfast suddenly came alive with defensive fire. Small turrets emerged from hidden ports all along her hull. They moved with impossible speed and accuracy. When the aliens fired their next volley of missiles, the human point defense system turned every single one into scrap metal before they could reach their target. The watching ships saw it all. They had come to see the humans humbled, but instead they were witnessing something that would give them nightmares. The old human ship was not just defeating the aliens, she was doing it with casual ease. "Sir," the alien tactical officer whispered. "Their defensive systems are beyond anything in our databases. They're tracking and destroying targets faster than our computers can count them." Vexaler felt fear creeping into his heart. This was not supposed to happen. Zephyrians were the superior race. Their technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. How could these newcomers be so much better? Captain Vasquez opened a communication channel. Her voice was calm and professional. Commander Vexeler, you are now disabled and defenseless. Do you wish to surrender? Never. Vexeler screamed, but his voice cracked with fear. We are Zephyrians. We do not surrender to inferior species. As you wish, Vasquez replied. She turned to Chen. Target their weapon systems. One at a time. Let them watch. What followed was a perfect demonstration of surgical warfare. To steadfast guns fired with impossible accuracy. Each shot destroyed exactly one weapon system on the alien ship. The humans were not trying to kill the aliens. They were teaching them a lesson. One by one, the dominant pride's weapons died. Plasma cannons, particle beam arrays, missile launchers, all of them turned into twisted metal under the precise fire of the human guns. The alien crew could only watch in horror as their ship was systematically dismantled. They're not even trying to destroy us, the alien weapons officer said in a shaking voice. They could kill us all, but they're just ... playing with us. Vexeler realized the horrible truth. The humans were holding back. They could have destroyed his ship in the first few seconds of the fight. Instead, they were showing him exactly how outmatched he was. Every shot was a message. Every destroyed system was a lesson. The watching ships began to move away. Some of them were already jumping to hyperspace. Word would spread across the galaxy within hours. Everyone would know. What happened here? The proud Zephyrian Empire had been humbled by an old human ship. Sir, his communication officer said quietly, we're receiving surrender requests from our own fleet vessels in the area. They want permission to withdraw. The XLR looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was wounded. His beautiful ship was a floating wreck. The humans had done all this without even trying hard. He thought about all his boasts and threats. Thought about how he had called them primitive and weak. Captain Martinez said on the human bridge, their life support is failing. Should we offer assistance? Captain Vasquez considered this. She could let the aliens die. They had started this fight. It threatened her ship and crew. That was not the human way. Humans fought to protect, not to destroy. Open a channel to their ship, she ordered. Commander Vexelar, she said when the connection was made, we detect that your life support systems are failing. We can provide emergency power to keep your crew alive. The alien commander stared at her image on his screen. She was offering to help him after he had tried to destroy her ship. He did not understand this strange human concept of mercy. Why? He whispered, why would you help us? Because we're not monsters, Vasquez replied simply. We fight when we have to, but we don't kill when we don't have to. A beam of energy reached out from the Steadfast to the alien ship. It connected to the dominant Pride's power grid and began feeding electricity into the failing systems. The emergency lights stopped flashing. The air circulation systems came back online. Ayler felt tears on his face. These humans, who he had called primitive and weak, were saving his life and the lives of his crew. They had defeated him completely, and now they were showing him kindness. I don't understand, he said. We attacked you. We tried to destroy you. Why do you help us? Captain Vasquez looked at him with something that might have been pity. Commander, you attacked us because you thought we were weak. You learned that we are not. Oh, you're learning something else about humans. We believe that strength should be used to protect, not to destroy. She paused and looked around his ruined bridge. Your ship will be repaired enough to reach port. Your crew will survive, but you need to understand something. The Steadfast is 40 years old. She's not even one of our newer ships. She's what we call obsolete. Vexelar felt his blood turn cold. If this was an obsolete human ship, what were their new ones like? Tell your empire what you learned here today, Vasquez continued. Humans don't start fights, but we finish them. We don't look for trouble, but we're ready when trouble finds us. The communication ended. Vexelar sat in his command chair and stared at the human ship. She looked the same as before. It's old, worn, patched, and scarred. But now he knew the truth. Those scars were not signs of weakness. They were proof of survival. Each patch told a story of a battle won. Each dent was a lesson learned. The Steadfast had not just defeated him, she had educated him. And the lesson was one he would never forget. Captain Vasquez stood up from her command chair and walked to the main screen. The alien ship hung in space before them, broken and powerless. Emergency lights flickered along its hull. She could have destroyed it completely. One more shot from Chen's guns would have ended everything. But that was not why humans fought. She pressed the communication button. "Commander Thexler, this is Captain Vasquez. Can you hear me?" The alien commander's face appeared on screen. His proud scales had lost their bright color. His perfect uniform was torn and dirty. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes were the most changed thing about him. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something new. Understanding, perhaps? Or maybe just fear. "I hear you, Captain," he said quietly. "Good. I want to make sure you understand what happened here today. Not just for you, but for everyone who's watching." Vasquez knew that ships were still gathered. Around them, some had moved away, but others remained. They were recording everything. This conversation would be played across the galaxy within hours. She wanted to make sure the message was clear. "You attacked my ship because you thought we were weak," she continued. "You saw our old hull and our patched armor and you decided we were easy prey. You made the same mistake that many others have made." Vexillar said nothing. He just listened. "Steadfast is 40 years old, Commander. She was built during the Hegemony War, when humanity faced extinction. You know what that means?" "No," Vexillar whispered. "It means she was built by people who knew that failure meant death. Not just their own death, but the death of every human in the galaxy. Every system on this ship was designed by survivors. Every weapon was tested in battles where losing was not an option." Captain Vasquez walked closer to the screen. Her weathered face filled the view. "You see scars and patches on our hull. We see lessons learned and battles won. Every mark on this ship tells a story of something that tried to kill us and failed." Martinez stepped up beside his captain. "The fusion reactors that power our shields. We learned to build those after enemy plasma weapons burned through 6 different types of armor. The railguns that destroyed your weapons, we developed those because energy weapons were not reliable enough when your life depended on them." Chen joined them at the screen. "Our point defense system can track and destroy 1,000 targets at once because we fought enemies who fired 10,000 missiles at a time. Our shields adapt because we faced weapons that changed with every shot." Lieutenant Park looked up from his station. "Our engines can outrun anything because running away was often the only way to live long enough to fight another day." Captain Vasquez nodded. "Every human ship is built with one purpose, Commander, to bring our people home alive. We don't build ships to look impressive or to show off our wealth. We build them to survive." She paused and looked directly into the alien commander's eyes. "The Steadfast has fought in 37 major battles. She has been boarded 6 times, rammed twice, and hit by weapons that don't exist anymore because we destroyed the species that made them. She has been to places where the stars themselves were weapons and back again." Dexalor felt a chill run down his spine. He was beginning to understand what he had really faced today. This was not just an old ship. This was a veteran of wars. He could not imagine. "How many ships has she destroyed?" he asked quietly. "We don't keep count," Vasquez replied. "We fight to protect, not to conquer. But if you're asking how many enemies thought they could defeat her because she looked old and weak, well, you're still alive to tell that story. Most of them are not." The captain turned to address all the watching ships. "Let me be clear to everyone listening. Humanity does not seek conflict. We prefer to trade and explore in peace. But we learned long ago that the galaxy is a dangerous place. We prepare for that danger." She gestured toward her ship. "The Steadfast is what we call obsolete. We have newer ships now with better weapons and stronger shields. But even our oldest vessels are crewed by people who understand what war really means." Martinez spoke up again. "Every human ship captain has fought in real battles. Every engineer has kept engines running while under fire. Every weapons officer has had to make shots that decided whether their friends lived or died. Don't train in simulations," Chen added. "We learn from veterans who survived impossible odds. Every technique we use was paid for with blood, and tested in actual combat. Captain Vasquez looked back at Commander Vexilla. Your ship is beautiful, Commander.
Yes.
Your technology is impressive. Your crew is well trained. But you made one critical mistake. What mistake? Vexillar asked. You thought that looking dangerous was the same as being dangerous. You thought that new was better than experienced. You thought that pretty was stronger than proven. She walked back to her command chair. The Steadfast doesn't look dangerous, because she doesn't need to. Anyone with sense takes one look at our battle scars and keeps their distance. Only fools attack ships that are obviously veterans of real wars. Vexillar felt the weight of those words. He had been such a fool. He had seen the scars and patches as weakness when they were actually warnings. It attacked a veteran warship with an untested cruiser crewed by inexperienced officers. What happens now? He asked. Now you go home, Vasquez said simply. It's repair your ship, and you tell your people what you learned. You tell them that humans are not easy prey. You tell them that our old ships are old because they're too tough to kill. She pressed some buttons on her chair. We're sending you enough power to get your engines working again. It won't be fast, but it will get you to the nearest port. Your crew will survive. Why? Vexillar asked. Why do you help us after what we did? Captain Vasquez smiled slightly. Because that's what humans do, Commander. We fight when we have to, but we'd rather make friends than enemies. Maybe next time we meet, you'll remember that. The power beam from the Steadfast reached out to the alien ship. Slowly, the Dominant. Pride's engines began to glow again. It would be a long, slow journey home, but they would make it, Commander Vasquez said as she prepared to end the communication. One more thing. Tell your Empire that the Steadfast sends her regards. And tell them that if they want to test human resolve again, they should bring more ships. A lot more ships. The communication ended. The Steadfast turned away from the broken alien vessel and began to move toward the hyperspace jump point.
How she
Looked the same as when she had arrived. Old, scarred, and patched. But now everyone knew what those scars really meant. As the human ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, Captain Vasquez made one final announcement on open channels. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth ship Steadfast. To all vessels in this sector, we wish you safe travels and peaceful journeys. Stars are big enough for all of us. The old ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a broken alien cruiser and a lesson that would be remembered across the galaxy. Humans might look like easy targets, but appearances could be very deceiving indeed. Commander Vexilla sat in his ruined bridge and watched the stars. He had a long journey ahead of him and a difficult report to write. But he was alive, and that was more than he had deserved. The humans had taught him that mercy was a strength, not a weakness. He would remember that lesson for the rest of his life.